主席，感謝全體嘅反對派議員，由而家開始俾我呢個全程嘅安靜嘅同埋應有嘅莊嚴嘅環境。主席、各位議員、各位市民，香港嘅民主進程同埋經濟發展充滿機遇。機遇當前，我哋要作出抉擇。喺政制問題上，我哋要喺落實普選同埋原地踏步之間作抉擇；喺經濟問題上，我哋要喺發展同埋停滯之間作抉擇；喺民生問題上，我哋要喺改革同埋因循之間作抉擇。
That more or less reflected the relationship between the government and the pandemocrats after the Occupy movement. When the Occupy movement was concluded last December, those who engaged into the Occupy movement had vowed to fight back, as they were wondering what more they could do before the legislators cast their ballots over the constitutional reform package. Hence, they took every opportunity to endure their civil disobedience campaign whenever and wherever possible. Yet, C.Y. Leung and his colleagues were also working hard to regain the political momentum, as they demonstrate that the government didn't turn into a lame duck administration after the Occupy movement. The government might be far from a lame duck, but indeed the political struggle over constitutional reform did spill over to 2015. So how did the political struggle unfold this year? Let's look back. One day before the government kicked off the second round public consultation on constitutional reform, the government submitted a report to China's Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office. The report came following the only direct dialogue between the government's delegation, led by Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam, and the student leaders back in November last year, in which Carrie Lam promised that she would submit a report to Peking detailing the background of the constitutional reform as well as the cause of the Occupy movement. The government insists that the report had reflected the social milieu in Hong Kong, but critics said it was a complete bias. Pan-Democrat legislators had vowed to boycott the second round public consultation and veto the government's package.
政制發展必須要建基於基本法同埋全國人大常委會嘅決定，否則係無根之木、無源之水，不切實際。普選行政長官嘅目標只會係鏡中花、水中月。我特別喺呢度呼籲各位議員，特別係泛民主派嘅議員，雖然佢哋已經離席，我呼籲佢哋積極參與討論，唔好杯葛諮詢同埋否決方案。
2 days after the government restarted the public consultation on constitutional reform, a veteran from the Democratic Party pledged to give up his electoral super seat after the Pan-Democrats vetoed the government's package.
By resigning from my electoral seat so as to trigger off a territory-wide de facto referendum. I think the Hong Kong people would seize this opportunity to fully express their view and their demand to the central government that the MPC decision should be retracted, should be withdrawn, and that a new political reform process should be re-engaged.
Yet, the Democratic Party rejected the idea of de facto referendum in the last constitutional reform battle back in 2010. No wonder why they had doubts over Albert Ho's profound wish.
If he resigned, he should resign back in September or August of last year, so that the umbrella movement can spread and can use the de facto referendum as a means to gather public support. So the timing is terrible. But late is better than never.
I think it's very important that this whole process had to be discussed among all the Pan-Democrats and also with the people's organization, so that it would be not just a party resignation, but it would be a total democracy movement.
6 months later, Albert Ho dropped his pledge, saying he didn't get full support from the Pan-Democrats. What about those who played a pivotal role in the Occupy movement last year? 5 weeks after all the Occupy zones were cleared, the initiators of the Occupy movement attended a police telephone appointment. Despite they were marginalized by the students in the movement, their mood remained upbeat.
喺香港裏邊做任何嘢都要按法律去做，咁違法嘅就承受個法律嘅結果啦咁樣。但係若果我哋冇違反到任何乜嘢嘅法，我亦都唔相信有啲咩打壓可以影響到香港人爭取民主嘅決心。
They were arrested upon arrival, but the police didn't charge them. 4 weeks before the first anniversary of the movement, the student leaders were appeared at court. They all plead not guilty to charges over unlawful assembly.
If the case is pretty forward, why the police and even DOJ takes a year to accuse those people? So this truly reflects that the case is totally a political prosecution.
Meanwhile, the persons involved in the notorious dark corner lynching at LEUNG Road in Central on October the 15th last year will also end up in court. All 7 police officers and Civic Party member Kin-yuk were plead not guilty for causing bodily harm and assaulting police officers respectively. They will be tried separately next year. 5 days before the public consultation was about to conclude, Carrie Lam remained busy with her PR battle as she stressed that she would listen to different views. But when someone tried to break the deadlock by throwing new ideas, she was rather apathetic.
自從陳宏毅教授提出呢個白票守尾門嘅方案呢，我哋接觸嘅政團好或者係其他組織好呢，都係冇乜一個熱切嘅反應嘅，大家都好冷淡。往後如果政府嘅方案包含咗呢個元素呢，亦都未必得到各個政黨嘅支持嘅。
講翻民主嗰度咧，民主嘅。
Indeed, Carrie Lam and her colleagues had already admitted that the chance of winning the constitutional reform resolution at the Legislative Council was pretty slim. They may have realized what political consequence would follow, but it may be hard for them to take full responsibility. Hence, they shift the pressure onto the Pandemocrats.
當然，你話政改做唔到，到時要大家分擔責任。我作為問責官員，到時都要認真考慮，即係自己要負上咩責任。但係立法會嘅議員，畢竟咧，今次過與不過嘅權係喺佢哋嘅手裏邊。
咁所以作為一個泛民嘅議員，佢哋話要推行民主，都希望佢哋真係身體力行，喺投票嘅時候咧，亦都係尊重翻民主嘅精神。
Although Carrie Lam and her colleagues had urged the Pandemocrats not to boycott the public consultation, they didn't take the opportunity to break the ice. In late February, the Democratic Party held the 20th anniversary banquet, but all senior officials were absent from there. The party did send invitations to them, but media report revealed that CY LEUNG forbidden to attend.
We don't mind. I don't mind, and they don't matter. We hold a party, we invite people to turn up, and if they do, we are very grateful. And if people have other things to do, we respect their decision. But what we don't want is for people in power to try to send a very hostile signal to my party, to my members, and also to the community.
Only this man from the government had the guts to attend.
I always believe that an open, civilized society like ours should respect the opposition as well. So here I am.
On April 22nd, Carrie Lam summarized her political battle with a package that falls within the framework imposed by China's National People's Congress Standing Committee on August 31st last year.
我哋建議由1200人組成嘅提名委員會，按照現時選舉委員會4大界別，共38個界別分組組成。具體提名程序分為委員推薦同埋委員會提名2個階段。每名委員只可推薦1名參選人，每名參選人可獲得嘅委員推薦數目上限為240名。呢個代表制度係可以容許最少有5個。同埋最多有10個參選嘅名額，每名委員最少應該係支持2名參選人。獲得提名委員會全體委員過半數支持，並獲得最高票嘅3名參選人成為候選人。
No civil nomination, but committee member recommendation along with a rather complicated nomination procedure. It was significantly deprived from the pan-democrats' demand. With that, a question followed: will there be another wave of great defiance this time? Ten days after Carrie Lam unveiled the final constitutional reform package, the Pan-Democrats restart their campaign to resist the government's PR battle. The Pan-Democrats claim that the government's package was utterly a bogus package and must be rejected. With that, they make every attempt to woo the public that no deal is better than a bad deal. By the time they launched what they called "No Deal is Better Than a Bad Deal" campaign, the social milieu had changed significantly. Remember, in the final days and months leading up to the unprecedented Occupy movement, Benny Tai and his allies had been leading the campaign for over a year. All of the very sudden, the students detonated a political petrol bomb and eventually took over the lead from Benny Tai. This year, the students didn't make any impact. Instead, they were in disarray as they were engaged in an operation to topple a student federation. In mid-February, 2 months after the Occupy movement, a group of students from the University of Hong Kong kicked off a faculty-wide referendum urging their student union to leave the federation. They won the motion unexpectedly. Their victory triggered a knock-on effect, as similar referendums also took place at 4 other universities. The Leave the Federation campaign accused the Federation of hijacking the student unions of each university, but not accountable to all. They also blamed the Federation of too supportive to China's democratic movement, but not doing enough to defend Hong Kong's interests, as well as the critical error committed during the Occupy movement last year. But they denied their move would jeopardize the democratic movement in Hong Kong.
究竟留聯係咪真係亦都可以保障到民主力量呢？其實學聯佢喺上年嘅雨傘革命期間，或者佢今次退聯上邊，佢所做出嘅行動，亦都令到好多同學對於學聯係失去信心，或者甚至乎係厭倦咗學聯。
4 out of 8 student unions left the federation, but the impact was far from there. For the first time in 26 years, the Federation didn't attend the annual June 4th candlelight ritual at Victoria Park, while the Hong Kong University Student Union held their own ritual on the same day. Weeks before the legislators cast their ballots on the constitutional reform package, a former legislator from the Democratic Party and a serving legislator from the Civic Party pledged their own ideas. Nelson Wong believed that the Pan-Democrats shall prorogate the government's package under certain conditions, while Ronnie Tong believed that Hong Kong shall find a new approach to achieve universal suffrage rather than just confrontation. He formed a think tank to facilitate his thoughts.
We would wish to establish a new way forward to provide Hong Kong people with another alternative and see if this new approach would make any difference in helping Hong Kong to achieve its goals, both as regards the development of democracy and the realization of the one country, two systems concept.
What about their relationship with their parties?
公民黨目前係一個非常之多元化同埋自由性相當高嘅一個政黨嚟嘅，咁我哋無謂喺度咧係去糾纏啦。
I will talk with Democratic Party face to face. I don't comment openly.
But will you stay in the party, or can you start another party of your own or something?
I want to stay in the party forever. I will not leave the party.
Yet, there were rumors in the run-up to the voting at the Legislative Council, as a number of Pan-Democrat legislators were purportedly lured by Peking with at least $100 million of cash in lieu if they support the government's deal. The Pan-Democrats denied and reiterated that they would vote down the package as promised.
而家就取決於在座每一位議員今日所投下嘅一票。 如果今次特區政府提出嘅議案獲得通過，我哋就會立即着手本地立法嘅相關工作，讓2017年可以順利舉行普選行政長官。
所以呢個假方案，我哋唔會待一世，更加亦都唔會待一屆，係唔會待一日。我係代表好多無千無萬嘅市民去講俾特區同埋中央政府聽。
泛民呃咗選民嘅選票，今日就要剝奪我哋500幾萬人嘅選舉權、投票權。
At the end, just 8 votes from the Liberal Party supported the deal, 28 against. How come? Well, a huge group of pan-establishment legislators left the chamber at the very last minute in an attempt to let LEUNG to come back and cast the ballot, but it ended up in fiasco. They apologized to the public. 4 days after the fiasco at LEUNG, Rodney Tong finally made up his mind.
I have met with the President of the Legislative Council and have delivered to him a letter of resignation. As of this moment, I am no longer a member of Civic Party. 民主派所有嘅朋友，包括公民黨裏邊嘅所有嘅朋友，都繼續會係。
His departure triggered off a by-election on February 28th next year, but he left with dignity at least because Nelson Wong was expelled by his party. Indeed, an even larger scale of political earthquake was already looming. On July 21st, the government announced that the Secretary for Home Affairs, Zhang Duck-Seng, and Secretary for Civil Service, Paul Tang, were replaced by Lau Kwong-wah and Clement Cheung respectively with immediate effect. The government didn't reveal the reason, but there were rumors revealed that both men were asked to say, "It's time to retire." The move shocked many across the political arena. Many believed that they were sacked by CY Leung. The reshuffle didn't undermine the government's attempt to regain the political momentum. One of the most remarkable examples was the Battle of Innovation and Technology Bureau, or the ITB. It first came into light in 2012, shortly after CY Leung elected as chief executive. Pan-Democrat lawmakers had tried several attempts to stop the ITB to become reality over the past 3 years, but they lost their last chance at LEUNG's Finance Committee this autumn. As a result, the ITB finally became reality on November the 20th. Having won the ITB battle, the government engaged into another battle called Copyright Amendment Bill, as the bill was presented to LEUNG for second reading in December. Dubbed as Article 23 on cyberspace by netizens, the bill has caused tensions between netizens and copyright owners. Like the ITB, the Pan-Democrats are now trying to prevent the second reading from taking place. By the end of the year, it's still pending at LEUNG. The government said they would not withdraw the bill. While the government is still struggling with the Copyright Amendment Bill, another controversial policy is looming: electronic road pricing scheme, a scheme that first came into light in 1984 but shelved by the colonial government. The Transport and Housing Bureau said the scheme is aimed to relieve congestion in Central and Wan Chai, and it would be right to implement it as the Central Wan Chai bypass opens in 2017. A 3-month public consultation is now taking place, but some motorists are already dismayed by the scheme. Indeed, it will be hard to implement the scheme without the support from the community, but the government may have to revise their lobbying strategy as a new number of faces emerge after the district council election on November 22nd. It was the first major political battle since the Occupy movement. The election not only attracted existing players to run, but also a number of so-called political freshmen inspired by the Occupy movement. A number of legislators were also running, especially those who want to stand as supersede legislator next year. But this veteran legislator was struggling to cope.
我諗每一個選舉咧都會有機會贏，有機會輸嘅。對我嚟講就係我哋盡全力去做，最後就由選民決定。
Turnout was fair, 47%. Some 1.46 million voters cast their ballots. The result shocked the territory. A number of heavyweights were defeated, including this legislator from the Pan establishment. He was defeated by a political freshman inspired by the Occupy movement.
咁咧，自從戰爭之後咧，究竟呢個手提局咧就多咗好多年青人即係登記做選民。咁而家佢哋發揮嘅作用咧係發揮到一定嘅作用。咁所以咧，往後落嚟咧，我哋點樣去應對呢個手提族啦？喺以後嘅區議會或者立法會裏邊咧，我諗我哋翻去都要多啲思考啦。
At the end, 4 legislators lost their district council seats, together with a number of veterans from various parties. It's still far from a major overhaul because Pan establishments still retain a majority. Never mind, because they are looking forward to see a major overhaul in the Legislative Council election next year. Coming up, we will be looking at other issues that touch our nerves this year. More on that when we come back. The property market in Hong Kong was rather bumpy this year. Figures from the Lands Registry revealed that the number of new flat transactions in the first 7 months this year was up 4.1% compared with the same period last year, with transactions just over 9,800. The situation reversed in the second half of the year as the transactions of the second-hand flats and the rent were going downward. But the story was very different in the subsidized housing market, as the Housing Authority received over 128,000 HOS applications in January, of which 95% were white applicants, and it was 59 times oversubscribed. In order to let more white applicants to get on the property ladder, the Housing Authority has decided to revise the ratio between the white and green applicants, and it will be implemented in the fresh round of application next year. Meanwhile, the government has urged property buyers to be cautious about the interest rate, as the US Federal Reserve raised the interest rate for a quarter on December 17th. But the standard of living in Hong Kong was ruined by this saga. In July, a political party collected a number of tap water samples from a public housing estate in Kai Tak and discovered that samples were lead contaminated, sparking health scare among the residents. The government played down the problem at first, but water samples were also collected from public housing estates across the territory. A number of samples were lead contaminated, involving 11 public housing estates. Blood tests were subsequently carried out among the residents. Lawmakers accused the government of doing too little, too late.
1個鐘頭做得4個至5個嘅收集嘅樣本咧，我覺得如果你私家醫生咁樣去做體檢咧，即係停執笠都得啦，係嘛？
我哋係同意，即係我哋亦都係盡咗好大嘅努力咧，係去盡量加快我哋喺驗血裏面嗰個工作嘅速度同埋個容量嘅。
喺未有呢一個專責小組之前呢，你都係可以代表政府為呢件事向受影響嘅居民呢係致歉。
喺一件咁大眾關注嘅事，引起市民嘅關注呢，我哋都係深感不安。但係我覺得市民最期望我哋呢，就係盡快能夠可以揾到含源呢個源頭呢，嚟到去徹底解決嗰個問題嘅。
With mounting pressure, the government revised the water test operation by adding 980 kindergartens onto the list. The saga has forced the Housing Authority to impose tendering ban on 4 contractors. So far, over 4,000 public housing residents took part into the government-arranged blood tests. Samples with excessive lead were found among 126 residents. 86 of them were children. An independent inquiry led by Justice Andrew Chan was subsequently formed. 14 officials from the Housing Authority and a number of building contractors have been testified since the inquiry began in late October. A final report will be out by summer next year. The criminal proceedings of Lamma Island ferry collision finally took place in March as 2 officials from the Marine Department were ended up in court. 58-year-old Assistant Director of the Marine Department, So Ping-chi, was accused of willfully misconduct himself by instructing his subordinates not to enforce the Chapter 548G of the Merchant Ship Regulations relating to life jackets, contrary to common law and punishable under Section 101, Part 1, Subsection 1 of the Criminal Procedures Ordinance. 60-year-old retired ship inspector Wong Kam-ching was accused of giving false statement in the Lamma Island ferry collision inquiry over the number of children's life jackets on Lamma 4, contrary to Section 31 of Crimes Ordinance. They plead not guilty and their cases have been referred to the district court pending a trial next year. On February 16th, the coxswains of Sea Smooth and Number 4 were sentenced to 8 years and 9 months behind bars by the High Court, respectively. Two former die-hard supporters of CY LEUNG will appear at court this year, but their fates were very much different. The former executive councillor, Barry Cheung, was sentenced to 160 hours of community service order as he failed to pay the overdue wages to his former employee of the now-defunct Hong Kong Mercantile Exchange. His sentence came as the Mercantile Exchange was in financial difficulty and unable to pay wages to its employees in late 2013. The employees subsequently filed their claims to the Labour Tribunal and succeeded. But Cheung ignored the order. As a result, he was charged by the Labour Department. He pleaded guilty in April this year, despite the background report recommended him to serve the maximum hours of community service order. He was sentenced to 6 weeks of imprisonment. He then filed an appeal to the High Court and managed to overturn the prison sentence on September 14th. However, he was declared bankrupt by the High Court in April, as he was unable to repay a huge debt, totaling some $120 million. How about this former CY LEUNG supporter? In May, the former deputy chairperson of Pearl Orient Oil, Liu Meng-hung, was found not guilty of conspiracy to defraud and money laundering by the High Court. Liu Meng-hung and 2 other female defendants, Yik Siu-hung and Kitty Yip, were accused of deceiving the Hong Kong Stock Exchange and potential investors while raising funds for a $225 million oil field project in Utah between 2009 and 2011. They were arrested by the ICAC in 2013 and put on trial in March this year.
呢次判決對於還我清白固然係值得高興，但係亦都彰顯咗香港嘅司法制度嗰個法治嘅核心價值，呢個係更加值得高興嘅嘢。咁我2年幾嚟裏邊嚟講咧，一直都抱住本來無一物，何處惹塵埃，清者自清嘅心態。
Yik Siu-hung and Kitty Yip were found guilty of conspiracy to defraud and sentenced to 7 years and 5 years of imprisonment, respectively. But Liu Meng-hung is far from trouble-free because he will be reappeared at court over perverting the course of justice next year. The former chief executive, Sir Donald Tsang, was formally charged with 2 counts of misconduct by the ICAC in October, 3 years after he left the office. Sir Donald was accused of failing to declare his interest to the Executive Council that he was in negotiation to rent a luxury flat in Shenzhen, China, which was owned by the major shareholder of Digital Broadcasting Corporation, Wang Chaopao, and a sum of 800,000 renminbi was paid to Wang by his wife, Selina, when the government was handling the broadcaster's license application between November 2010 and January 2012. He was also accused of failing to disclose the name of the flat's interior designer to the owners and non-officials Justice of the Peace Selection Committee. Sir Donald pleaded not guilty to both charges. 26 prosecution witnesses will be testified at court. His case is now pending a referral to the High Court, and the trial is expected to take place in 2017. The Asia Television was trapped into a series of legal proceedings this year as ATV was unable to pay wages to its employees. ATV managed to settle the claims at Labour Tribunal, but ATV and the executive director, Lee Ka-po, were subsequently prosecuted over late wage payment. ATV pleaded not guilty and was fined $380,000, but it pleaded not guilty. Early in the year, ATV was already struggling to execute a High Court order imposed last December. The order required ATV to sell a small portion of shares. At the same time, ATV was struggling to pay the broadcasting license fees, but still intended to renew it. Lawmakers were dismayed by these.
過去嘅記錄續牌有冇話11月交俾佢個建議，然後拖到而家2月啦都未有嘅？冇啊！我而家話俾你聽個答案係。
咁等咩呢？以時間換取空間，就等個所謂白武士出現。
行政長官會同行政會議呢，自去年11月收到通訊局呈交嘅建議之後，一直係按照程序同法例要求，盡快處理有關嘅申請。
As the White Knight was yet to show up, ATV became furious and publicly declared that Ricky Wong and HKTV would acquire the shares, but they denied. On April the 1st, the government finally announced that ATV's broadcasting license would not be renewed and would be expired on April the 1st, 2016. After that, RTHK would take over ATV's analog spectrum. 3 weeks after the announcement, HKTV won the judicial review over government's refusal to grant the free TV license, but the government filed an appeal shortly afterwards. The case will be heard on February 27th next year. On November 27th, Ip Karpo was found guilty of late wage payment. He was fined $150,000.
呢個罪名成立，對我嚟講已經係一個人生不可磨滅嘅污點。對我嚟講已經係一個人生最大嘅一個刑罰，將會係我人生嘅一個枷鎖。
A week after his sentence, ATV was struggling to pay the wages again. Ip Karpo subsequently resigned, saying he could not infringe the law again. When we come back, we will be examining the implications of a written constitution which published 25 years ago. That's after a break. Welcome back to Hong Kong Review 2015. A quarter of a century ago, Hong Kong was in its final approach to the sovereignty change in 1997. 7 years before the sovereignty change, China's National People's Congress endorsed a document called the Basic Law. The document wasn't just a symbolic of China's sovereignty in Hong Kong, but also outlined Hong Kong's commitments to China, as well as guarantee Hong Kong's basic rights under the concept of one country, two systems. 25 years on, the document has become a key element of our judicial system, but a series of incidents this year indicated that those basic principles might not be able to cope with the increasingly complicated relationship between Hong Kong and China. Early in the year, CY LEUNG urged everyone in Hong Kong to stay alert on a new ideology that he believed is treacherous.
2013年，學院編有一本名為《香港民族論》嘅書，主張香港尋找一條自立自決嘅出路。對學院同埋其他學生，包括佔中嘅學生領袖嘅錯誤主張，我哋不能不警惕。
That's the book he was referring to, and his remarks were unintentionally boost the circulation, and it was even out of stock for a while. Pretty bizarre. But why these people are so keen to promote Hong Kong independence?
我哋係主張香港建國，因為任何嘅民主都必須係主權在民，冇主權嗰人全部都係假民主。
But China couldn't tolerate this. In late January, China was about to finalize the National Security Act. At the same time, a group of China's National People's Congress delegates pledged to add the new law into Annex 3 of Basic Law until Hong Kong fulfilled its duty to protect China's national security, as mentioned in Article 23 of Basic Law. The new law came into effect on July the 1st. It requires Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan to uphold the national security and sovereignty of People's Republic of China. Legal experts from China said it wasn't targeting Hong Kong.
这个是，它是就本地的而言，就香港本地立法，
反港独法。应该说这是国家安全里面的一个问题，是应该加以考虑的。但是我想不能代替23条立法。
He might have his case. On June 15th, police smashed a bomb plot at the disused Asia television studio in Sai Kung. 9 people were arrested. 6 of them were charged with conspiracy to manufacture explosives, but 2 of them were released on $20,000 bail, and charges against a female suspect were later dropped. Police said the suspects were members of a radical group which promotes Hong Kong independence, and they were trying to detonate a bomb at a public rally in Tamar, where the legislators were preparing to cast their ballots on the constitutional reform package at the Legislative Council. The defendants were yet to plead, and the case is now pending. In April, a series of seminars were held to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the Basic Law. Every time a seminar was held, the government and those from the pro-Peking camp used the opportunity to reinterpret the Basic Law.
近年我哋喺推動政制發展嘅時候，發現好多人對於基本法嘅認識並不全面，甚至有唔少嘅誤解。
香港作為一個特別行政區，權力來自中央，權力大小由基本法規定。一國兩制係例外，唔係常規。常規係一國一制。一國兩制冇國際標準，國際標準係一國一制。
Even a pan-democrat shared a similar view.
基本法一國兩制本身係一種妥協。如果你話我淨係要一國兩制，唔要基本法呢，可能會令到對方認為你係有一種輸打贏要嘅心態。
英國的干擾，他通過了一個居庸權法案嘛，這個也挺歹毒的。你行港人治港，我把你港人變成英國人，還是要搞英人治港。
Throughout the year, there have been calls from the pro-Peking camp to further enhance China's sovereignty in Hong Kong, causing outcry across the territory. They claim that China has the supreme authority in Hong Kong, and the values left behind by the British before 1997 were the cause of the scuffles between Hong Kong and China in recent years. Like this one between February and March this year. In early February, a fresh round of anti-parallel importer demonstrations erupted across the territory. The demonstrators blamed the parallel importers of overloading local transport system and causing nuisance to the community. The first wave of demonstration kicked off in Tuen Mun 1 week before the Chinese New Year holiday. It resumed every weekend after the holiday and spilled over to Sha Tin, Tsim Sha Tsui, Shanxi and Yuen Long.
唔相信共產黨啊你，中國人！開大路，開大路，開大路！
Over 40 demonstrators were arrested and dozens convicted. On April 13th, the Shenzhen authorities announced that they would suspend the multi-entry visa for Shenzhen residents traveling to Hong Kong, but those who applied before that day would not be affected. But government figures revealed that the number of visitors coming to Hong Kong has dropped by 10.4% compared with last year, and the number has been dropping for 6 months, of which visitors from China dropped more than 15%. The government said they would try to boost the tourism industry by promoting Hong Kong in countries other than China. About 4 months later, another round of scuffle. In late June, a group of netizens held a demonstration in Mong Kok condemning the street performers, purportedly visitors from China, of causing nuisance on Hong Kong streets. They believed that their performances were rather bad taste and utterly a cultural invasion from China.
我哋要做勇敢的香港人，唔係勇敢的中國人，係勇敢的香港人，將呢啲冇品味嘅蠻夷打走、驅逐。
Again, it ended up in violence. Yet, the ideological divide between Hong Kong and China can also be seen in sports events. In November, Hong Kong was fighting against China in Group C of World Cup 2018 qualifier under the name Hong Kong-China as specified in the Basic Law. Both teams shared the same anthem, but when the anthem was played, they responded in this way. The Hong Kong Football Association was fined 5,000 Swiss francs by FIFA over the assault of China's national anthem. The government might have enough with these, so they decided to do something real. In October, media report revealed that the post office plans to cover the colonial insignias on the post boxes in March next year. The reason? To avoid confusion. There are currently 59 colonial post boxes across the territory. The post office once said before the sovereignty change in 1997 that there's no need to replace them. Archaeologists were furious.
政府部門嘅徽號改呢係啱嘅，不過呢啲作為文物嘅嘢呢，就唔應該喐佢。唔同嘅徽號代表唔同嘅英國君主，如果遮住佢，根本連佢係幾時生產嘅都唔知道，佢歷史冇咗意義。
The post office said they have no plans to revise their decision, but will find out how to preserve the colonial post boxes. The colonial insignias might be safe from now, but a number of things we've been familiar with have become history this year. We leave you now with those images. From all of us here, Happy New Year. Goodbye.
唔該晒，冇特別嘢講。